Sudan. And then we have an old rift that comes across Lake Turkana all the way to Lamu, even up to the offshore, sorry, up to the Indian Ocean. Then we have another rift here, Mandera, and then we have the young rift now, the tertiary rift from Ethiopia, all the way through Lake Turkana to the Great East African Lakes from Turkana, Lake Baringo, Lake Natron, Lake Nakuru, Lake Mdeita, all the way Naivasha up to Tanzania. Why? This rift occurred as a result of continental drift. You have heard of continental drifting and drifting. So initially, the Earth was one mass, we call it Punky, but then as the tectonic tectonic systems took place, rifting started, and then drifting also started. So this is Africa, this is South America, this is Australia, this is India, and Russia and all that. So as it drifted and drifted, then we had these rifts coming into existence in the about 70 million years ago. So then we look at do we have the oil in these areas. We know that the East African Rift System, it is one of the very extensive rift in the Earth surface. We are told that if one was in the moon as an astronaut and you are to look down on the Earth, you will you will see two distinct features on the Earth, the surface of the Earth. One is the Great East African Rift System, and the other one is the Great Wall of China. So this rift system is very extensive from Ethiopia, actually from the Middle East, Arabian part of Jordan, and then it comes through Ethiopia all the way to Mozambique. But then it's a rift system that is about 6,400 kilometers wide or long, and then the width is about 48 to 80 kilometers. So this is now the rift which began all the way from Ethiopia through Kenya, Tanzania, up to Mozambique. And then from the Tanzania part also, around Lake Tanganyika, there's a propagation of this rift which goes to the western arm. We have the eastern arm and then the western arm, as you can see in the next figure. So this is the rift that I'm talking about from the Middle East, Arabia plate. But as you, from the north, it's a bit wider, but as you come down, it narrows. So then these are the areas that we are looking for oil. Apparently, as I said, up to Lake Malawi, then Lake Tanganyika there, then the western arm is this one where we had discoveries of oil in Uganda, in Lake Albert. This is in the western arm of the Great East African Rift. Also in Kenya also, we have recently had a discovery in Lake, near Lake Tanganyika, that is in Turkana County. So therefore, these are the great East African continental margins that most companies, major exploration companies, have had interest coming to look for oil in this part, search for oil in this area of the Eastern African region massive system. So then the Logijar oil is the one which was the latest discovery, which we struck the first well called Ngamia well in 2013 March. This well was found in the tertiary rift, and you find that we have huge potential of this unexplored part of the rift system that, as I already mentioned, has created a lot of optimism for the international oil companies to come and look for oil in this East African Rift system. So that is basically where the Logijar is. The first well was this one, Gamia, followed by Trigger, and then all these are the areas that has potential for oil. We have already done the assessment, and the oil is already there. It's a question of now developing. So, but we look at that. So before then, major discoveries, as I've said, you have to, the way we have discovered one in Kenya, you have to continue exploration, and you have to use a lot of seismic work. The first, before Logijar was discovered, we had only 3 wells. One well called Leopard 1, and another one was Elias Spring 1 to the eastern part of the lake. They not show any indications except this one of Leopard. But the other ones, the Chalbi 1, Bellatrix, and Syria as well in Chalbi Desert had some indication also, but we didn't get it. That was now in the late 80s up to early 90s. But then recently, 2012 now, Italo came and drilled to the western part of this Logijar, and that's when we had a discovery of Gamia well. That is the Gamia well in Logijar Basin. That is how the system, how you have to mobilize the drilling rigs, uh, houses for the workers, and even all those other logistics. You have to, before you do the drilling, you must have done the mobilization. So that's one is from the aerial view. These are the workers doing the foremen and all that doing the drilling in Lokijar Basin. And this is now, the Lokijar Basin is this one here, that as I've mentioned, it has already shown and proven to have some good oil. And we had even some export of about 240, was it 240 barrels of oil that we exported in 2020, I think, or 2019, the first well. So here I've now given you the geology of the area. We have the basins. These are the Chabi Basin. We have the Lake Turkana Basin. We have the Kerio Basin also, the Lokichar Basin, and then Lotogibi Basin to the northwestern part of Kenya. Good. So historically, you find that this system, the Great East African Rift, which has a kind of a triple joint from, we call it Afar, in the Ethiopian part, it comes all the way, as I was mentioned, through Kenya to Tanzania to Mozambique, and another one also bifurcates to the western arm. Now, this is where oil explorations are, oil companies are trying to look for oil in these depressions or in these rift basins that have proven to be one of the, they are one of the old, they are very old basins of tertiary. When I talk of tertiary or cretaceous, they are about 120 to 70 million years ago. So here, the two rifts have continued to propagate downwards all the way from Ethiopia, and we have already mentioned that they come through Kenya and then they die towards Malawi part. Now, this is how it has happened. Yeah, when there is rifting and drifting, especially this part of the rift, East African rift system, the extensional forces have to pull apart. This force pulls apart this part of the plate or this part of the earth, and then to the eastern and to the west. As the extensional forces pull apart or tripped, then it creates some weak zones whereby the atmosphere, the mantle comes tend to come up now as the rift goes to the east and to the west. Eventually, you have the legs within the graben, within the rift formation that has been caused by these tectonic forces. So as the drift continues, you will see now we have two forces, but in this part of East African part, we have the extensional forces. But there are other countries, you could have also the compressional forces, one force from the west, from the east, another force from the from the west, and then you have this kind of mountainous areas, and we have some subduction zones. This is where we have frequent earthquakes and also volcanism. So in this case, the East African Rift also is very good. It has already enabled us to have some sediments deposited within the rift that could be highly potential for petroleum formation. So actually, the East African Rift has a very huge with these tectonic activities. It has and which took place in tertiary time with the uplifting and warping of the magma or the atmosphere, the earth, I mean the subsurface part of the earth, which is very high, it has very high temperatures. That is why we have geothermal within the rifts. So therefore, with those sediments of this age, we call them Mesozoic and Paleozoic sediments, they are mostly found within these areas where tectonism has occurred. And therefore, sorry, now, even as the tectonic took place, we had two domes, the Ethiopian dome and the Kenyan dome. And then the Turkana depression is somewhere here. That is where this part, the dome also caused a lot of separation, whereby we have the Somali plate, we have the Nubian plate, and we have the Arabian plate. So we are told that in future, this earth is still the earth system moves or pulls apart, tearing the the western part and the eastern part. And therefore, as it continues tearing apart, then the rift zone, the rift part, will eventually have water all the way from Russian Red Sea coming all the way through up to Kenya, so up to Malawi and all that. So eventually, we might have this part of the country, of this part of Kenya, being separated by the water. See, if, as the drifting continues, the Arabian plate, the Nubian plate, and the the Arab plate also moves up there. That will be millions of years to come. Don't worry, we shall not be there. But then we shall have water coming all the way and separating Kenya into two. The same thing also like that we have been seeing in Suswa area. We have some roads. The roads have been also been having problems, and we have had some drifting, and therefore the geologists plus all the geosciences have been wondering how do we have connection. But this thing must happen. There's no way if it is the nature of God, and therefore in millions of years to come, this part will have been separated because of the tectonic forces, and that's why even in Kenya we have to, as a geoscientist, we have to be very careful. So what are we saying here? Regions like within the East African Rift systems have been known to contain hydrocarbon accumulations. Even in Kenya, I've told you in Legalbat, in Kenya recently we have had now in Lokichar and also in Ethiopia. So these are some of the areas that has good quality source rocks that could have matured now, given the geothermal gradient, to give uh, rise to the oil deposits. So these discoveries in Logijar also has, and also in Legalban has enabled the East African Rift system to be proven to have some good working petroleum systems. That means we have oil potentials in our rifts. So therefore, this generation of this oil and accumulation also, they have been driven by a number of factors that I have mentioned, the tectonic activities as well as also sediment deposition. So in this case, sorry, as what plays a big role is the high geothermal gradient. As the blocks drift and the graben comes down, then the hot magma comes up, and therefore the temperature that hits the sediment which collects the or source rocks means sediments have living organisms that have been buried below the surface of the ground. Some highland within Kenya and East Africa region because of the movement of the water which will have also followed the Great East African Rift. Now, in value chain, I want just to take you briefly very fast because of the time about once you have discovered this oil as we have seen this Ngamia well. Once you have discovered this oil, how do we manage as Kenyans now that we have seen the basin has a lot of potential, good amount of barrels of oil. We have already had some good prospects, as you saw in the first figure. Now, how do we transport this oil to the for export purposes or even for refinery? So this is what I call it oil chain. In this case, we look at downstream now. Okay, that was upstream. What I was showing you is upstream. We look at the midstream. How do we after the exploration, after the discovery and appraisal, we have already done that. We have discovered and we have already done appraisal. Now we are yet, Kenya is yet to go into production. And when we go into production, we either can produce also oil in Lakichari, which is onshore, which is on land, or some wells also will be drilled offshore within the waters in like in Lamu Basin. And now, if you have those oil, how do we move them to refinery? What are the merits and demerits of having our own local refinery? Or if we don't have, are we going to republish or improve the ones we have? Or if not, then we have to send our crude oil, which we have already discovered, which we have already gone into production. But then before then, you must have some pipelines. You must have the midstream, how to transport this oil from Logijar all the way. So in this case, when we are doing exploration and production in value chain, you have to look at first we do the geological the upstream, which includes exploration, appraisal, and development up to production. Then you go to the midstream. The midstream now is looking at the transportation. How are you going to transport this pipeline, building pipelines? We wanted to build a pipeline from Logijar all the way to Mombasa together with Uganda, but apparently we were a bit slow in Kenya, and therefore the Ugandans went the Tanzanian way. It's very long though, but then they have already agreed to build a pipeline from Port Portal in Uganda all the way to Tanzania. So one, you have to have the pipeline. After that, you have to have the downstream, how do the refinery and marketing of your products. So once you have discovered, the next thing is to look at the logistics. How do you transport your products? But then, in brief here, geologically, every sediment, every rock formation or rock type has its own velocities in kilometers per second. So we usually use seismic data to interpret what is below the surface. Before you say, let us drill here and there, or there were some source rocks, there were some reservoir rocks, that there were some traveling mechanisms. What are the structures? What are the lithologies? What are the lithologies below the surface? So for you to understand that, we use some seismic. We interpret the seismic depending on the speed of how you saw the track there that we usually use. These are the tracks that we pump in. They go even up to 10 kilometers, and then they are reflected back to the geofolds. And these geofolds now can capture some waves, some kind of, it can give you some structures that we call it seismic lines and stacks that you can interpret as a geoscientist to know that this layer is sandstone, this layer is shale, this layer is whatever. So, but then these waves must be pumped along the surface, and then they are reflected back to the computer, and then you interpret now so that you may address and advise the company that would want to drill. That we have sandstones here, we have shales here, and we can see the formation is good. Now, in exploration, we have that we know that all exploration activities in Kenya have been going on, except up to sometimes there was a lull, there was a small break, especially after the discovery of the Logijar one. But still, we have about 47 blocks, which what we have done, that area I was showing you where we have the oil, we have subdivided into so many different blocks, so that each block you give it to a company. So if it is tallow, they took, or there's a company from France called Cepsa. They took the 10A, 11A, tallow, 10BB, and 10BB and 13D. All these blocks they have been given to international oil companies, and therefore these oil companies are trying to already. They have made an effort. They have looked at different types of onshore and offshore blocks, and we have some good oil deposits within the Indian Ocean. And that is why we had also a problem in Kenya, when between Kenya and Somali, because the Somali government had, you have a cone of condition here, but I don't want to go into the details. And that is why because of these blocks, which have a low, very good potential of oil production in future, we have to agree on how to and how to put the baseline, or the border of between Kenya and Somalia. So some people suggest that the border should go straight like that. Others, but the way we know, the border goes parallel horizontally, and then we have this part, because we are given by international, there's the law of the sea, that you have to agree and then sign with the various countries. So the discovery here, I've said, we have already had a discovery in March 2012, and it was in the tertiary rifts, and the oil was sweet, waxy crude oil, similar to those ones of Uganda in Legalbat. And therefore, the discovery now, as I'm talking to you now, is about 1,000, not 800 actually, it's about 1,000 billion barrels, because we had not, here, I had not included some other blocks that are about 12 or 13 of them. So therefore, this northwestern part of Kenya is very rich and has good potential of oil. So in midstream, again, you have to look at the major concerns that every country must consider. One is governance. Is the international oil companies cannot come and invest in your country if the country is hostile. We have no peace. We have people are fighting, people whatever. If the country is stable, then that's governance. You look at the infrastructure, the local content, the market. If all those things are there, then that is when now you can have your value chain, and you can have your resource value chain, and then by extraction, you already have the extraction optimism, as we have seen in the upstream. You also have to look at the value enhancement. You look at the revenue management. How are you going to collect your money from this production of oil? So those are the major decisions that one country must have to do as they invest in this handling of these millions of, hundreds of millions of barrels in your discovery. So in the offshore production also you can have, once we have some good potential areas, you can have floating rigs to do the drilling of the offshore. Once also you then even also the infrastructure. Look at the power. You have to install the power. You have to have the good roads, and that's why even Lokijar we are building a good road all the way to Lokijar because of that. All this they play a very vital role in oil midstream enhancement. So in the midstream still also you look at, you have to hit like those lorries which were transporting oil from Lokijar to Mombasa. We had to have some lorries which had some heating capacity so that that waxy oil which had been discovered, which had been produced, cannot be solid. So you maintain the oil to be liquid in form. So you have to have heated pipeline, you have to have refined products for your market, and you have to also see how you are going to to export your products. So in refinery, therefore, for do we have good good for natural oil is of course a natural strategic mineral or yeah, mineral. Also, you look at the profitability and how you have the technology also. And then against is that sometimes we have very low margin. We need to also exploit our economics of scale. We may not be having enough money to do the drilling, so that's why you have to encourage external companies, high capital costs also, and you have to look at the payback. In this case, you have once you have the oil, you have taken to the refinery, you can categorize them into three parts or three products. Those with high heavy products which are high temperatures, those with middle distillates which you can also use about 1800 to 180 to 360 degrees Celsius, and then those with low boiling points. So those ones, then they can give you the applications. What kind of mineral, what kind of oil? If it is a heavy one, they are using, you use them for industrial applications, for power generation, for ships. But the middle one you use for the planes, fuel, and also for cooking and heating and all that. So oil is a very important product, energy product, and therefore you in those are the drivers that help us to be competitive. Economic of scale, upgrading capacity, logistics. You have to look at the logistics, also the market proximity to the market, and then you also have to look at the as you produce the environmental quality capabilities. You have to check, make sure that your oil, crude oil, has low sulfur, and therefore it may not. Otherwise, it has, if it has a lot of sulfur and all that, or all those heavy aromatic carbons, then the oil may not be of very valuable, may be useful for those products we saw up there. So in brief, you can either process your oil through, you can get natural gas, uh, gas processing and transportation, or you can go the method I've already mentioned, from crude oil to oil refinery to your products and then to your marketing of your products. Those are the procedures you undertake during the midstream. In conclusion, maximization of revenue of resource value is very important. You must to ensure that you have optimal cost in operations. That's exploration to from exploration to production. You must also insist on efficiency in separation and processing to secure maximum value of products of your products and derivatives. You must also seek maximum raw rewards from your sales, and also consider the local petroleum based industries to increase the value as they use these products for energy. This is how we do the cost economic recoveries. Once a company like Talo has discovered the oil and they have gone into production, then there is a petroleum sharing contract, PSC, or petroleum sharing agreement. This petroleum sharing contract must be signed by the government and the operating company. And therefore, you say now that you have had a discovery, we are moving into this into production. Once we produce our oil from Lokijar Basin, then the first 1 year, the company takes, like Talo now, takes 80%, the government takes 20%, second year, 60%, 40%, third year, 40%, 60% the government, fourth year, 20% the company, 80% the government, and then the fifth year, nothing. The company now will have recouped all the money that they had used in the drilling, and therefore they leave the oil field to the government, and therefore the government takes 100% share of the export products. So therefore, that's how we do the agreement with the international oil company. So in this case, you can see that one has to plan always, and this planning is very, you cannot tell the future. Sometimes even right now they have stopped the oil exploration there, oil production there, because the company is trying to farm out, look for other investors. You have been seeing the TV, the way they say the national African oil is looking for investors to come and farm with, to come and sign agreements with us so that they take into production. So it's a very unpredictable path, and therefore sometimes these things of nature of God, things that God gives us, needs to have a lot of wisdom and planning. The Proverbs 19:21 says, "Many are the plans in a man's heart, but God's purpose will prevail." So we still have to ask God to prevail for us to discover and to maximize our energy products in terms of oil and gas. Food for thought. This is an area that the presenter today did some research work for his PhD in the northwestern part of Kenya, and that is the area that I had already identified. That was in 2003. I had said that after using all those investigative geological and geophysical and whatever geochemical work, I identified the areas with black question marks, that these are the areas that we need to drill and get the oil. Some in the Lokijar one is this one now, the Gamia well. It is this one. When they drill and they found it, the company had nothing to correct. They said, and this is what they said there, the potential petroleum as per this, okay, this company doing 12, 11A is this part of the basin. But then they were using my work and saying that if I had already identified properly the area that that Talo, that's the area. What they have done here, they have put the maps, I mean the blocks, onto my work to correct, to find out whether what I've done, what I've identified is correct. And they had nothing to correct. That's why they say here below. Yeah, that's why they say, as you can see, the researcher identified two use potential, but then saying that also note also that he correctly identified basins in which oil has been found by Talo recently. So the presenter here is the first Kenyan to have discovered this oil. Currently, we in Kenya, we don't recognize they say that the prophet is not recognized in this home area. I was seeing the government of Kenya giving a Gideriman medal and leaving me who discovered the oil in Logija. Let's continue. As we finish, I want to go very fast with the rest. Now, energy supply and demand in Kenya. I come from this part of Kenya, and let us look at what are other sources of energy apart from oil. We have energy sources of energy in terms of biomass, petroleum, we have already mentioned that, hydropower, geothermal, wind, and solar power. So all these are the most important sources of energy that we use in this country, and we use for our own agricultural waste. Apart from our own agricultural waste and industrial residues, also we have municipality waste that can generate also oil, I mean energy. So therefore, commercially viable oil deposits as I've already mentioned, have already been discovered in the country, being in Turkana area. We will still have to continue with exploration and exploitation of these minerals, of course, in other parts of the basins. Now, energy consumption pattern in Kenya, you see the majority of our energy consumption comes from this one of 68%. It comes from biomass, which is almost 68%, petroleum follows, and then electricity and others. So installed capacity, as of now, we are almost approaching 2,500 megawatts. But then you find that hydro gives this percentage, about 38%, fossil fuel 33%, geothermal we get 27%, and then biogas and these other ones less, you can see that percentage. So therefore, we still have, apart from petroleum, we have this sources of energy that I've already mentioned that is very important for the country. And these are the institutions that manage these energy resources, biogas, geothermal, and all that. So we have the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. We have the Rural Electrification, Energy Regulatory Commission. We have also the REA, which is Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy, Kenya Generation Power. We have Kenya Power and Lighting. We have Kenya Transmission Company, Ketraco. We have also the GDC. So all these are the institutions that manage our other energy sectors, and therefore they continue. We continue looking. Especially now, we have in Jomo Kenyatta and Nairobi University, we are trying to look at geothermal resources of the Rift Valley, the East Africa Rift. But all in all, we still have all these other sources from geothermal, solar, wind, small hydro, biogas generation, and others. others in terms of power, or maybe whole coal power plus biodiesel. So all these can give us all this, they have potential of giving us all these megawatts, and they can be used now in areas. They are found in all these areas, like in power gas, we have the from sugar growing zones. We have wind also in Turkana and also some parts of Eastern Kenya, and northeastern Kenya, like Garissa. And geothermal, of course, we know it's usually situated in the Great Eastern Rift, which we have looked at for oil. So therefore, solar energy potential, in other words, Kenya is stretched along the equator, as we know, and has high isolation rates with an average of 5 to 7 peak sunshine hours. Therefore, they are good for the installation of our solar panels. About 10 to 14% also of this energy can be converted into electricity. You take them into the grid. Once you get the solar energy from geothermal or solar, or you can feed them into the grid, national grid. And therefore, we still, the total potential of uh, photovoltaic, these are solar now, installations is estimated to be even up to about 24,000, over 24,000 megawatt hours per year. So the solar power is largely very important, and we can still tap it in this country. We have also wind power, wind energy, which is, you have seen a very big, massive project in Turkana. There was some problems the other time with the Spanish company who installed that wind power in Turkana. The megawatts that they generate can also be fed into the national grid, and therefore that's a very important energy source. So wind power you can see in various places, Turkana, Kinango, Gong, all those, and they are giving us all these megawatts to a total of over as of now, suppose 700 megawatts from wind. So those are some of the things we have to have: the infrastructure, the power also, and all that for you to enhance this solar. So that is very important. As I was saying, that planning also is a very important thing. Let me wind up with this as I conclude. This one I will not go into the details because I wanted to say that we have some wonderful coastal recreational areas like the hotels, and those hotels with the climate change and global warming in the some years to come, we shall not be having them. The ice will have melted from the because of high temperatures, because we have destroyed our ozone layer, the the carbon dioxide and other those poisonous gases have destroyed the ozone, and therefore the ice in the polar and in the North Pole and the South Pole will melt. And as they melt, where will all that massive water go to? Our oceans. And that's why I was suggesting here that climate change is one of the defining issues of our time, and it is now more certain than ever that humans are changing the Earth's climate. The evidence shows that the atmosphere and oceans have warmed, and they are also accompanied by also sea level rising of the sea level, plus also the strong decline of those Arctic and Antarctic sea ice in the North Pole and South Pole. And therefore, climate change is a periodical modification of the Earth's climate, and therefore, which is of course brought about as a result of the atmosphere, which are the interaction between the atmosphere and various geological or chemical, biological, and geographical factors that are within the Earth system. So what are we saying here? Those are the North Pole, melting of ice because of high temperatures. So, and that's why the other day we had the climate conference in Egypt, and they were discussing these issues. That this, if we are not careful, we don't stop these carbon emissions there, then we shall have all the North Poles and South Pole ice melting, and therefore these waters will come and destroy our coastal wonderful recreational structures. Anyway, this you see the temperature increases. As the temperature increases, the melting also continues because of the we have already destroyed our ozone part. So we need to be very careful. And I'm not going to go into the details of this. We need to be careful with our climate. As I've already mentioned, it is very important because the climate always will have to give us how the weather is in terms of we have to incorporate many things: the temperature, the precipitation, the humidity, and the wind. And apart from that, the mean state and variability of all these factors over some extended time period will now affect our ozone, and therefore we'll have problems as I'm not going to go into that structure, but I wanted to mention that global warming and its impact on our Kenyan coastal structures is very important. We need to be also careful. Even the developers and plus environmentalists, they must be able to take care of that. Global warming, as we have said, is the observed increase in the average temperature of the Earth's atmosphere and oceans. So therefore, our coastal zones, not only worldwide, will have to be impacted by this global warming. And therefore, our Kenyan coast we also have a problem in our Kenyan coastal structures, and therefore, though they are beautiful, we go there to enjoy ourselves, but we need to take care of that's why we've been told to plant how many trees per acre of your land. So we need to also have a government coastal development authority to take care of this global warming. And this one must liaise with the coastal development authority, and they must give us coastal regulation zones, areas that can help us to prevent this movement of massive water that would come from the ice. By in terms of planning, I think I'll give you the recommendation. Look at this. Global warming, I've already mentioned that these are the major factors that influence the global warming. The release of greenhouse gases delay the escape of infrared radiation from the Earth to the space, thus causing general climatic warming known as greenhouse effect in terms of water vapor, carbon dioxide, not nitrous oxides, gases, and also of course the ozone. So these are impacted by the global warming. You can see now this is Mount Kilimanjaro. In the 50s we had these ice caps on top, but now it is like receding, very few ice caps because of the climate change. Similarly, the same with Kenya. If you look at that, that was in the early 50s. You could see some ice caps and you can see some glaciers there. But then, you go there today from satellite, you don't see anything because of the global warming. And therefore, we need to be very careful and know the impact and the effects of this global warming, uh, which we have already mentioned, that it can cause a lot of disasters, climatical hazards that can even cause even cancer to the human species, I mean human beings. So this is how the increase in temperature and pressure. I mean the temperature as far as global warming is concerned, as the ice are melting, and then this is also these are our wonderful. This is a diagram showing you the impact of the effects of this global warming, because we have to have our industries, of course. We have to develop. I don't know the countries. These Western countries are asking us not to produce our oil now. Now that we have discovered oil, we are not going to use even coal, because they are saying that it will impact the ozone layer, and therefore we should stop. How are we going to develop? And yet these guys have done that using the same products, that minerals that we have now, that we are now discovering this, as I showed you up there. So in other words, what are we saying? The glacial melting, as you can see, it is receding. It is coming down from up to now. We are in 2023, and the ice have just or the melting has increasingly decreased. So those are some of the features that we need to take care of in our coastal areas, and therefore why the rise of sea level is very important. We need to take care of that. And what am I saying here? In conclusion, we need to recommend, what are we going to do? Okay, let's put even not 2020, by 2025, we should have coastal areas. We should who should these coastal areas management teams like NEMA, the coastal zone management, and coastal development authority. They must implement by enforcing the laws that could help us arrest this problem. We also have to have the coastal hazard prone areas. You plant maybe mangroves so that you should to avoid the risk. You also have to look at we have to look at our environmental laws anyway, and make sure that we take care of this kind of problem that is imminent and it's going to happen. So therefore, we need to discourage greedy developers or builders or those guys who want to build wonderful hotels along the coast without knowing the impact. So those developers and hoteliers, we need to discourage them from ravaging the coastal lines through by enforcement of our force. I mentioned NEMA acts and NEMA laws. We also need to the environmentalists also and political developers should demand an integrated coastal zone management plan that should contain some positive steps to protect the fragile ecological, coastal ecological zones. and therefore we need to also encourage the planting of mangroves along the shorelines and in order to protect the coastal structures from the grave catastrophic future disasters. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I've come. Thank you so much for hearing and listening to me. We still have to.
Hello. Sorry, I lost my connection. I was not getting you the latter part. Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me though. Am I audible
Yes,
enough?
we can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Prof, for the presentation. I think it was enlightening and very engaging. Yeah, I think they should give you credit for discovering the oil. You are the first discoverer. Now is the interactive session. I'll invite any opinions, thoughts, questions, or observations from the audience, if there's any. Yeah, the floor is for the audience now. Please, if you have something to say regarding this presentation.
Thank you, Mboya. Silence means concurrence. I think everybody must have followed the presentation.
I think
We
so
can
too.
still,
Yes.
I don't know.
There's a
One is asking here, what are we to do with the oil discoveries against the? A minute, I want to answer that. One has just asked me here that, okay, I've seen some questions here. Uh, can we can hear, okay, what can we do with the oil discoveries against the global warming here in Kenya? In fact, thank you, the David Mwangi. Uh, I've already addressed it here by saying that as much as we also want to protect the environment and want to take care of the ozone and obey the climate change rules and regulations, we what do we do with our discoveries? Okay, we are that was the only one in Lokijar. We are yet to discover others offshore in Malindi, Lamu, in the waters and also on land. And we know that energy, petroleum is one of the energy drive for all economies in the countries. That even like Middle East. For your information, the Americans have had wonderful reserves of their oil. They have never exploited. They have been exploiting oil from the Middle East. But once they expose that, I'm sure they're going to do the drilling and exploration, production of their oil. As much as there will be give and take, but I think we have our coal also, which is, they are saying that's one of the disaster for the environment, the coal in Mui Basin. And if we can discover there's an enormous coal apart from petroleum in the country, I think apart from the global warming, we have to develop also, and if that is what we can use at our hand, at our disposal to do the infrastructural development of the country, economic development of the country, we definitely have to negotiate with the Western world or the fast world. Uh, Someone is also asking whether the government has thought of doing a refinery of crude oil and pump back to our local markets, or yeah. So that one is very interesting. We used to have a refinery in Mombasa, Ibefu refinery, but then the government realized that if we were to renovate that uh, refinery for our processing of crude oil once from Turkana or any other business that we'll discover in future, it will be more expensive even to renovate it than to build a new one. So as of now, that's why even when we had that few pilot oil oil pilot export that we exported through our president and the then minister for petroleum last time, we have, as of, I'm sorry to mention that it may not be feasible to have our refinery as of now. We shall either export them out, we refine them outside, or in Tanzania, if they will have constructed a good refinery. Otherwise, yeah, it will not be possible for us even to put up unless we know the quantities of oil that we have in the country. But if it's all that one from Logijar, I think we shall still export them as crude oil, and then they will be distilled and refined outside the country. But those are some of the logistics that I was saying, midstream and downstream, and when the governance, we must have oil and gas.
Thank you. Any other?
Professor,
You
I
could
can see
take over.
Professor Benjamin Adewi, Adewi from Nigeria. He was one of our adjunct professors in Chekwat. He has been coming to teach our students of mining and mineral processing engineering. Thank you for congratulating me, Professor. Thank you so much. I thank God you also follow this talk. May God bless you, and please keep in touch.
I will keep in touch. Thank you very much, and congratulations once again. And I
Amen. Amen.
appreciate everyone at the audience for the beautiful presentation. And we believe that there will be further cooperation with our university from what you have presented. The one thing I want to ask is it possible to have an African
I
hello?
hope I didn't get you. I didn't get the last words, Professor.
Yes, I'm saying that is it possible to have an African embrace environmental management agency instead of a national environmental management agency that we are having all over? Is it possible to have it in an African platform?
Yes, I thank you for as of now, each and every country has their own environmental management authorities that deals with their local environmental issues. But I think that's the way to think. That's the way forward. We need to now harmonize all our African environmental authority issues, and probably through our African Union, plus also our regional. Of course, I don't think when you have ECOWAS there, you have some kind of organization like that, which you have already harmonized all your environmental issues. But that is the way to go. And I think with this climate change, most of our heads of state will be asked to do that so that we harmonize everything and have an harmonize so that when you move from one country to another, the same environmental and legal issues and frameworks will be applicable, will be also harmonized, will be conducive for each and every investor. So I think that is I concur with that suggestion. That's the way to go. The way we are also planning to have all additional small scale mining. The small scale miners were illegally. We used to see them as illegal, but now we need to encourage them and we need to have them also all over entire Africa. Thank you. I can see you want to ask.
We have raised hands.
Benjamin,
It's okay, Benjamin. Go ahead and ask your question.
Benjamin Siso, you have any question? I can see your hand raised. Oh, yes. I can see Julia, you have asked also, Dr. Muyugi, you have asked whether we could have whether the pool of oil and gas reserves in the East African uh, community could be enough would be enough to set up refinery for the region's consumption. Kindly, I also touch on the gas discoveries in the and their significance. Good. Yes, I have mentioned. You are right. as we continue with exploration and discovery of this oil, there will be need for, especially as the East African community, East African member states, given that we have now 7 of them, we have gone up to Congo, DRC, and also North, and we have the South Sudan government. There are 7 of us. There will be need for us with all those discoveries of oil and gas. There will be need to have a center of excellency for coming up with a very up to the state of the art refinery in the entire East African region. That one, I think, our heads of state, our heads of state will discuss that as they have their summit in the East African community meetings. That is good. It's peaceful event for us as experts. We should encourage that, and that will be good because we should not be exporting our crude oil. Instead, we do it and put value addition in the entire region within the East Africa region. Also, that so I think that is possible.
Okay, thank you. So I think in the interest of time, we may have to stop at that. But just I
I
can,
I, I
sorry.
think with that
Mm,
we okay. I didn't mention that Tanzania has good potential
okay.
of gas, Songo Songo and other rifts within the Tanzanian basin, also basins, which also is one of the resources of this hydrocarbon. But mine, one of the oil and gas resources that we need to exploit in this East African region. They can also build pipelines to pump all the way to Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, I mean Uganda and up to Congo. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Yeah, like I was saying, in the interest of time, we may have to stop at that. But we have a YouTube channel called Webinars MMP JQuat. This recording will be available on it sometime later today, so you can still go check it out, share if you can, subscribe if you can also. Also,
Thank you.
you can comment there. Your comments and any other opinions are welcome. So unless Chair has anything to say, I don't know.
Thank you, Mboya, for the chance. So I see there are more comments coming. Um, Perhaps we can give 5 minutes. Jacob Mutua had raised a hand, and there are also 2 questions. Maybe we can take those and close. I also want to recognize and thank Professor Benjamin for creating time for this webinar. We are grateful, and we look forward to having you, Prof, on the next ones to come. So if it's okay, Mboya, perhaps we can have Professor Rob address the 2 questions from CISO, and even Mutua has typed in the chat session. Then maybe we can
Good.
close.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. On CISO's question that what is the state of natural gas exploration and mining in Kenya, and what is the impact of its use on the environment? Well, CISO, for your information, apart from we have most of the wells that have been drilled, except some one well in uh, in Abaswin in Wachia, and also some offshore wells which had some indications of gas. We have seen some discoveries of gas in some of the few wells that have been drilled in Kenya, but they have not been. They are also waiting. Okay, that was what we call exploration. Then you go to appraisal. And then from there now you go into development. We have not gone into development, but at least we have had some discoveries of oil and gas both in Kenya in our basins in Kenya, and we are yet to develop them. Though they may not be of, as much as of high quality like those also of Tanzania, but at least there is an indication that we have also gas in Kenya. Apart from that, there is a research that some company from we are heading towards that also. We need to do some helium. Helium is one of the rare gases that are being used in the industry nowadays, even as like the way we have for petroleum. And East African Rift has attracted quite a number of international oil companies, international companies, to come and research in that in this part of Kenya. They have already done that in Tanzania, and they have had a discovery of helium. They also wanted to come and do it in Kenya, and I'm sure we were organizing that with the Ministry of Energy before the previous government left, and we wanted even to attach some students to do some research with them, and they also achieved their PhD through that research of helium. So helium also comes in areas where we have geothermal areas that are hot water, the geothermal geysers. Good. For the other question of Jacob Mutua, he wants a comment on coal discoveries in Kenya. Yes, we have, Jacob, we have enormous quantities of good quantities of coal in Mui Basin, Mwingi Kitui area. And that coal had, in fact, there was a Chinese company which had been given a license to do the politics. I was telling you about the good, yeah, most of the companies, they have to look at governance, they have to look at the infrastructure, they have to look at whether the country has goodwill to do the quantities of coal in our basins, and we are yet to exploit them. I'm sure that is one of the areas that may also cause some problems with climate change, global warming, and all that. But all in all, coal is there in the country. We have some, and also in some in Samburu, near at the coastal part of Kenya, where they were opening a plant today. The president had gone there to open a steel plant, Devki rolling mills. So we have coal in this country. Yes, thank you.